Hey there, guys, and welcome to another Beyond the Bottom Line. I am your host, Emil, and if you guys are enjoying the series, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and also follow our other social medias. We have on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and I think we're going to Twitter, and we recently just have our own TikTok. We are trying to be very youthful because we realize a lot of our youth and a lot of people we want to reach out to is all on TikTok. So I need to learn how to actually use TikTok and be very trendy on there. But speaking of youth, we are with someone who is actually involved in that industry, but also in local government. Same as like Kagiso Trust and Salga. So I'm going to give it off to Thina. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Emil, and how are you guys?
I'm good. Just being busy, running around. Before we start, do you just want to tell the audience just a little bit about like who you are, what you do, and what industry you lead in?
All right. Okay. Anyway, just like you said, my name is Thina Nzo. I have a PhD specifically in African studies, but I majored in local government studies in Africa. So as you can hear from my academic background, I'm in the local government space. I've been in the space for the past 18 years, since I was young at the age of 21. 18 years. Since the age of 21. But my area of focus has always been around research, publications, and also public policy training and capacity building, of which that is one of the major focal areas that I'm actually doing right now currently in collaboration with the South African Local Government Association, where we are rolling out a capacity building program for political leaders, specifically councillors. So local government is definitely my space. And I enjoyed it.
So I'm glad we're talking about local government because elections the registrations were just last week on the 3rd and 4th of Feb.
Yeah, for the national elections,
And what I've been seeing a lot of like online and social media, a lot of local individuals, like for example, the mayor of Cape Town, mayor of Joburg, they've always been speaking about issues against the current government. For example, the mayor, he was on a podcast with a guy based in Cape Town. He was asked a question, do you think shacks will ever go away? And he said no. Now, with that in mind, and with the current state of South Africa, what do you think shacks will ever go away? Do you think us as a community will actually be able to fix Africa in the next couple of years? And with this election coming up, do you think the new government or current government with new elected party members will be able to fix the current situation in South Africa?
I mean, it's one of the major problems that we have in this country when it comes to human settlement and spatial planning. It's the eradication of an apartheid, kind of spatial planning that we inherited post-1994, where there was a large population, which is the African population, that was excluded in actually living in cities and getting decent, living conditions, decent homes, so that those are some of the things that we have to think about when we talk about eradicating informal settlements, because working in the local government space, what we're faced with right now is the availability of land in the cities, because that's where most economic opportunities are. There's a lot of migration into cities. And when there is no availability of land, especially affordable land, affordable housing, then it makes it problematic, for the average South African, the working class South African, to actually get a loan in a bank and get property. So that's why you find that there's quite a lot of eruption of informal settlements. And with local government planning, that's one of the key areas which they need to start thinking about in their spatial planning so that we can eradicate informal settlements.
So before I go into my very beefy, heavy question, I want to relate back to what the mayor of Cape Town said. Or reason I'm bringing up, because that's the current source I could just remember like off the spot, but he said that I think in Cape Town alone, or is it just countrywide, they built the RPD, the housing thing that the government set up, is only able to build 2 million houses per year. Now, with that in mind, do you think that number will increase to creating more sustainable houses and not like the current RDP houses where there's cracks, like there's leaks in the ceiling, cracks in the wall, piping is done wrong, rust everywhere, and just dirt? And then my follow-up question to that is, as society, because like apartheid ended a while back, but can we still blame apartheid for today's issues? Or do we blame the current situation of a current government or current, I guess, areas in different communities?
Well, it's a multifaceted question. And let me start with the latter before I get to the former. The latter in terms of blaming apartheid for the current issues. We cannot remove our historical background that has shaped the post-apartheid state into what it is. We cannot. Because it's 400 years of colonialism, exclusion, marginalization of the majority of Black South Africans during that colonial era. And it was passed on, further in when the Afrikaner government took over in 1948, where the exclusion was more exacerbated through the legislation of apartheid. So it's years of trying to redress the divisions, the class, the racial divisions when it comes to our spatial planning and spatial inhabitants, especially human settlement. But then the government of the day, coming back to the former question, is that it has a huge task on its shoulders, particularly to address these spatial inequalities in human settlement. But then if you look at the way in which our governance system has been implemented for the past 30 years, it leaves us thinking twice about whether the current government of the day is really serious, particularly if you're going to look at issues related to corruption, issues related to service providers being appointed who do not have the capacity, to build proper housing infrastructure.
Speaking of corruption, I know Cyril Ramaphosa, he actually appointed someone to the corruption administration, but then he got arrested for corruption himself. So, even if we appoint someone to sort out corruption and then they're arrested themselves for corruption, is anyone we can really trust and anyone we can really hope to actually build the youth up again from where it is now? Because, currently unemployment is at a high. Education is a big issue. I don't know if you've been seeing around like articles, they say we have a high matric pass rate, but people have said it's been lower than what it actually is. And there's not that many opportunities for students to go out and get a job after high school or even after university because requirements are just too high now. So with that all in mind, do you think there's actually hope for my generation or even the generation after me, as a real thinker, after me in South Africa? Because it is a beautiful nation, there's no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. South Africa is a beautiful country with a lot of potential. Trust deficit is one of the biggest problems that we are having in our political system right now. And, we have indicators which have shown that due to the fact that there is now a decrease in the number of voter turnout in elections, particularly at local government level, where we have been led to have coalitions, and particularly mobilizing the youth, to go out there and vote. The youth are actually despondent because the state is not engaging with the youth. It's not talking to the youth to find out what kind of solutions can we come together and build for the future. There's no use of actually being a representative, a political representative in your middle age of 50, 60 to 70 years old without actually engaging the youth as a political leader, because you are trying to craft a country that is going to work for younger people. Economically, socially, and otherwise, these engagements are not taking place.
You look at like the youth registration and everything, right? Even myself, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know you could register online. And that's something that I've been seeing a lot of people my age and my, youth crew have been saying that no one knew you could register online for this election. Everyone thought you still had to go in person. So do you think it's just an issue of them not knowing how to speak to the younger generation, or are they just not trying anymore?
I think it's lack of innovation, really. I think it's lack of innovation in the sense of looking at what kind of participatory and engagement platforms can political leaders use where they can find the majority of the younger generation in terms of their presence in those platforms. Because you find youth in digital platforms. Youth are much more tech savvy. Youth want to be engaged in these platforms. So it means that when you are looking at processes such as voter registration, voter awareness, how does it that the government of the day doesn't see an opportunity of actually engaging in those platforms so that they can share the knowledge and information to the youth to say, you can register online. These are the platforms that you can use to do your registration, and this is what you need, and also start the conversations as well. So I think that is one of the biggest key factors that we have to contend with. It's a middle-aged and older generation that's leading a country that is not willing, to make enough space to allow for younger representation so that there will be enough innovation that is brought into the way in which it governs and it runs the state.
I think before we end, I have two more questions. And the first one's going to be very, more about you. And then the second one, you'll hear it was a really nice question. But my first question is, since you are involved a lot in local government, how have you seen local government improve over the years? Or has it improved, or has it just been going down?
It's been a decline. It's been a terrible, terrible decline. You don't need to go very far, Emil. We are citizens. We are shooting this podcast in a geographic location. When we wake up in the morning, we come to this location. We live in neighborhoods. Have you seen the conditions that we are living in when we look at our infrastructure, the way in which it has been dilapidating over the years?
Yeah.
And this is not just only in urban centers, but also peri-urban centers, your small towns. Local government has not been able to achieve its developmental goals, particularly when we have to look at the development of infrastructure. That is key. That is key in providing the basis of economic development, the basis of providing services to communities, because we have to pay for the services. But then how do you continue to pay for a service when you are, first of all, being billed incorrectly? You have water cuts, you've got electricity cuts because the energy infrastructure is old. So these transformers are always blowing up all the time, irrespective of the fact that we've got load shedding. We've got potholes all over the place in suburbs. People are actually starting to sell their properties in high income areas. So it's these, indicators that show you, besides even getting into what's written on paper, when you look at the performance reports on local government and the way these municipalities have not been able to perform, it tells you a lot about the state of our local government system as a deteriorating state over the past 20 years.
Just touch on that. In Ramburg itself, used to be very, everything used to work there, especially a little area where I grew up called Felons. Everything used to work there. And then for the past couple of years, the substation kept on blowing up.
Yeah.
And then there was no water. And then even when load shedding came, it was a worse thing because there was no water, no electricity, substation kept blowing up. Small pothole also. And that's a small little community in Ramburg. So, imagine, we don't have to imagine. We can see on a large scale, it's even worse.
Exactly.
Now, for my last question, what advice or what inspiration do you have for the youth? Because, look, the youth, let's be honest, it's our only hope now for the future of South Africa. What advice would you give them to actually come together as a community and actually help build South Africa instead of fighting with each other, actually help build up, support your local communities, try and make local government actually do what they're supposed to do, which community-based work and community-based projects. And then how can the youth actually help change the government's way of South Africa? Governmental way, sorry.
Well, I'm a strong believer of collaborative governance. Collaborative governance that moves beyond the ballot box. Yes, we can encourage the youth to go and vote. They need to exercise their democratic right. But beyond voting, we need an active youth.
So just to stop you there, it's just that you brought up voting, and I want to bring up I think I know why the youth doesn't want to vote this year. Granted, because of the whole, they know it was online thing, that's one small thing, but it's also because no one knows who to vote for. Because, look, a lot of people don't want to vote for DA because they have their own person. No one was for the ANC because they've seen no one was for the EFF. So I guess in tie with the last question, how does the youth decide who to pick, and then how do they build it up from there?
Yeah, it is a very tough question, especially when we are stuck with a political system that only gives us political parties and the individuals who proliferate from those political parties as leaders who are going to become our premiers, our presidents, our members of the executive committees, etc. So within this whole democratic deficit and decline, the expression of showing very low confidence in a political system, I think the youth should vehemently start talking about what kind of alternative political systems do we want as a country. I know that debate is quite suppressed, and this debate talks about, elected, independent individuals.
Like how the States does it, or how the UK does with the Prime Minister.
Absolutely, even with their mayors,
I like that idea, but then also there's the issue of, then there's a divide, like, are you on the left or are you on the right side?
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be either left or right politics or right-wing politics. We're dealing with modern democracies and modern dispensations. And the difference between developed countries and developing countries is that for us, it's butter and bread issues. So there is a crop of leadership that understand that as much as we are modernizing as a country, but there are certain elementary developmental issues that we need to address in a manner that talks to the current state of our development trajectory. And those are the kinds of people that the youth want to engage with beyond party politics, beyond whether you are green, red, or blue, you know, exactly. It's the everyday developmental issues that are not proliferating in the midst of these party political squabbles and quarrels that we see happening in these council chambers of ours or in parliament. So I would put it like that, the youth needs to have a much more stronger voice. If the youth feels that political parties are self-serving and they're not serving the interest of a generation that needs to take this country forward, and they want an alternative system, it's time to put that voice into action by actually leading that debate in finding those alternatives.
Well, Thina, thank you so much for coming on. It was a great time talking to you. And I guess I've some way have learned more about local government than I actually thought I would, especially with the decline of how they actually are and what the youth should actually do when it comes to voting and how they should get their own voice. And to you guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy Beyond the Bottom Line, please leave a like, share the video, subscribe, and follow us on all of our social medias. That's pretty much it. Thank you so much.